special AM broadcast election coverage on HAPS, the network of now. Today, I'm joined with a special guest, Harriet Marsden, a UK freelance journalist. We have a special clip that Marsden has sent in for us to view over what's going on in the UK and their opinions and perspective on the US election. And we will be showing that on your screen now. Harriet, can you tell me a little bit about what's the feeling out there? Harriet's joining us from right at the U.S. Embassy in the U.K. It looks really calm, Harriet. What's going on?
Well, Marco, as you know, the British mantra, keep calm and carry on. Although at this point, a few days of full coverage, and we've all been watching glued to our screens all day and all night because of the time difference. There is an atmosphere of just pure exhaustion here. Nobody understands why it's taking so long. The elections in the US are so different to ours. The process is so different. We cannot understand what the delay is. We are absolutely horrified at Trump's behavior, although unfortunately not surprised. And at this point, we just feel we're just done. We're just done.
I completely can understand that. I think there is a sense of exhaustion going all across the country, and it's interesting to see that it's going all across the rest of the world. Happening in the UK as well. I guess kind of going back to the comment, I didn't realize, and I guess a lot of us didn't realize, that so many people from the UK are also invested in the US election. Can you tell us a little bit as to why people from the UK are interested in US politics?
Right. Well, obviously we have the special relationship between the UK and the US. It's probably our most important ally. It's one of the most important Western democracies in the world, if not the most important, or it was until 4 years ago. So for the last 4 years, the UK has watched in just non-stop concentration and a lot of the times shock at what has been going on in the US. It's the same language as us, but it's such a different culture. We cannot understand what's going on. It's so difficult for us, but we cannot look away, especially as the UK is about to leave the European, or has left the European Union, but we're still in a transition period. So our relationship with the US is more important than ever. And obviously, things between the UK and the US have been better.
So, Harriet, one thing I think a lot of us want to know is what does Boris Johnson think of this election, especially if this is going to be the next 4 years is going to be a Biden-run U.S.
Well, the fact that it looks as if it will be a Biden presidency is not a surprise to the UK. It's not a surprise to Boris Johnson. It is, however, not necessarily going to be as easy as we might think. Obviously, Biden has Irish ancestry. He's very, very, very on board with the Irish communities, both here and over there. So that's going to be a major sticking issue with any post-Brexit trade agreement. Of course, Biden is seen to be much more stable, not difficult, much, much more predictable, and ultimately much more well-versed in foreign affairs, which means that the US may start to undo some of the damage that has been done with its allies around the world, which could leave the UK more isolated, which is definitely something that's on Boris Johnson's mind. That said, there is not too many surprises here. The question is just what happens if the Senate is controlled by the Republicans, where Biden is president. Then what can be done? What happens to climate agreements? What happens to nuclear deals? We just don't know. Hello?
My apologies. Sorry about that, Harriet. There's a really interesting question that just appeared in the chat. I really want to ask you this. Do you think the U.S. can reestablish its position in the world if Biden wins the presidency?
Short answer, no. Trumpism is still clearly alive and well in the US. We're trying to get our heads around the fact that millions of people voted for Trump for the first time this year, which means people can no longer claim that they voted despite not knowing what they voted for or what they were going to get. Trump has undone some long-standing bilateral trade agreements, some universal allyship, some general cohesion in the Western world, and that cannot be undone. Once America undid things like the Paris deal and the Iran nuclear deal, these sorts of arrangements and agreements, they are decades in the making, undone in one administration. That is not something that the world will forget. Now, the US might become a more stable prospect, but it certainly won't reestablish its place that it had before.
Completely understand. What do you think this would mean if the next 4 years the U.S. was run under the Biden administration and the American country rejoins the Paris Accord? What do you think that would mean for not only the world's environment, but also just the relationship between the U.S. and the European?
Well, Marco, it's very interesting because obviously one of Biden's biggest tenets is his commitment to environmentalism and to fighting climate change, which is obviously one of the most important preoccupations, particularly in the European Union. So we could see some progress there. But as to dealing with the US as a potential ally, we are still in a situation where millions and millions and millions of people voted for Trump. Who knows what's going to happen in the next election? America has lost the trust of the world, and it is unlikely whether it will get that back in 4 years.
Right. I know earlier you were saying that at the embassy there usually is a celebration when it comes to presidential elections at the end. So is that what is it being expected to happen in the next day or so? A celebration to happen outside the embassy, or can you tell us about that?
To be honest with you, Marco, I would be very surprised at this point. The UK sentiment towards the US elections is fairly negative. We are already discussing what happens if there is a lame duck presidency, what happens if Trump refuses to leave the White House, what happens to democracy, what happens to the people, what happens to the violence that's ravaging all the states in the US. So it doesn't seem too celebratory. I think probably we'll be relieved, we'll be tired, and we've all developed a newfound admiration and addiction to CNN live coverage, which has been incredible, because obviously our broadcasters, the style is completely different, the rules are completely different, and to us the US coverage is hilarious. We love it.
I want to take you back just a second to the notion of President Trump not willing to leave the White House. What kind of message does that send to the rest of the world?
Well, unfortunately, you reap what you sow. This is what happens when you let a narcissistic toddler in charge of the nuclear codes. And no one ever expected him to go quietly. He has been queuing this up for months. He's been talking about the fact that mail-in voting is open to fraud, and now rolling back saying, well, that I don't know why mail-in voting is so not going my way. And we don't understand why there are sensible, mature adults in the Republican Party even now refusing to condemn this behavior. This is an affront to democracy and democratic process, and we are just watching in horror as not only does Trump further trash his already in the gutter reputation in the UK, but also the rest of the Republican Party as well.
There are many commenters that have already been stating that President Trump needs to, quote unquote, pick up his big boy pants and actually concede when it comes time to it, instead of just holding this out and making the U.S. continue this any longer. But there's still a lot of people are still being very skeptical whether or not the president will even give a concession speech. But if he does, what do you think that will say? Do you think that would be able to make him look better at these final moments, if this is his final moments?
I think the best that he can hope for is to have someone far more sensible and intelligent than him write his script and stick to it verbatim. But I can already anticipate, we've watched him every single time deviate from the line, say whatever comes into his head, feed off of his own emotions. He's no control, no presidential demeanor, no pride, no honor. So petty, so bitter. There will be eyebrows in the hairline about the sneering about the democratic process and about fraud and about stop the vote, count the vote. There will be there has been so far in his presidency not a single moment of dignity, and I do not anticipate that changing. Even if he does give some kind of pseudo concession speech, I mean, what is he going to say after that on his Twitter every single day?
I mean, we'll see if his Twitter still is active after the election, given if the Biden presidency wins. But I think one big thing that you mentioned is the fear of Biden winning the presidency, and he ends up just becoming a lame duck president due to the Senate being a Republican majority held. I think everyone has their eyes looking on Georgia, the Senate race running right now. Currently, it looks like both of the Senate races, there are 2 seats that are open, are going to be going off into a runoff election on January 5th. The Senate seats specifically will be between Senate Kelly Loeffler, the Republican incumbent, against the Democratic challenger Raphael Warnock, and then the Senator David Perdue, the Republican incumbent, against Democratic challenger Jon Ossoff. I think these are 2 incredibly important seats that, if lost to the Republican control, that would be a Republican majority again. However, though, if this is flipped and if the Democrats are able to take these over, it would not be a Republican majority controlled Senate, and it would actually be more even. I believe it'd be 48-49, given if North Carolina and Alaska go to the Republican side. If this does happen, where it is now not a Republican majority Senate, and Biden actually has leeway to control the country, what do you think will happen? Is that a good thing, or what do you think?
Well, I think that what Biden and the Democrats have in common with the Republicans at the moment is far more important than what they have not in common. So at the moment, the most important thing for all of them, whatever political party they are from, is to get hold of the pandemic, of the coronavirus that is ravaging the United States. It's one of the worst hit places in the entire world, which never needed to be the case. It never needed to be like that. So hopefully, despite political differences, despite any kind of obstruction, hopefully the Republicans and the Democrats can work together to save American lives, because ultimately that is what they all have in common, is they are all trying to keep Americans safe, and that is what at the moment is not happening.
That's a really great segue into just Vice President Biden's speech that happened just yesterday evening. He came out expecting to give a winning speech, but due to the amount of votes and just how close everything is right now, the speech was actually changed into more of a let's wait speech. Some of his main points were sit, wait. We're going to count every single vote. But then on top of it, he said that he was confident that he and Kamala would win the presidency and win the White House. But one of the other main points that I found very interesting was he's already getting started on finding ways to beat COVID and to get the pandemic under control within the US, which I think, as you said, is the most important thing that needs to happen now, as we've seen numbers just inflate all across the country more than it had even during the summer beginning of COVID. This is the worst we've seen it, and unfortunately, the second wave is being deadly. And I think it was really good and safe to say that many people did not go out to the polls on election day from the Democratic side due to Biden's and a lot of the blue side's push to tell people to vote early and ahead of time, not only to get their votes in, to protect themselves from the pandemic and COVID that's sweeping the nation. And I think, unfortunately, for all the people that did go out during the national election on Election Day this past Tuesday, it was during one of the biggest numbers in spikes in U.S. history, and it continues to rise even to today. I think, like what you said, being able to get it under control and keep it under control is the most important thing that the next president, whoever they are, needs to do, and needs to do it without destroying the economy and shutting the country down. If they can do that, I think that's the most important thing. But I guess what I want to ask you next is that possible? Can they go into the next election? Can Donald Trump, if he wins, go the very first day with a plan to fix the country?
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, over here we've watched in horror at the rallies and the crowds of voters and these super spreader events. Nothing like that has been allowed in Europe all year. It is wild to us that is what is occurring in a country which has lost as many people as it has to this virus, and we don't understand why that has been allowed to happen. But either way, to us, Biden represents stability, predictability, and safety, and that is what, more than anything, America needs right now if it's going to get this pandemic under control. And it is a false dichotomy to say that it is the economy or the virus, because the virus itself, the amount of people that are dying, the amount of hospitals that are overwhelmed, that is terrible for the economy. It is not fair to say that getting the virus under control comes at the expense of the economy, because unfortunately the economy is built on people, and you're losing just a heartbreaking amount of people every day. So hopefully Biden on day one can come in with a plan, with a clear message on distancing, on mask wearing, on how to just get this under control, because that, if anything, Trump did the opposite. And we over here look at what's happening in the US with the virus, and we only blame Trump.
And I think, like what you said, everyone has their eyes glued from Europe to America on their screens, especially as everyone wakes up today to see that it's continuing. Hopefully within the next 24 hours, we'll hear a few states being called. But as we all know, this election is going to continue moving forward and not stop, with recounts that are going to happen. Lawsuits are going to be made, and this will be dragged on, unfortunately. But until the day that one of the competitors gives their concession speech, we will be going forward, and this will be continuing, and this will not be something that just stops suddenly. Well, I just wanted to thank you so much, Harriet, for joining me on this broadcast this morning, and thank you everyone who tuned in this morning for this special AM HAPS election coverage broadcast. The Harriet Marsden is a UK freelance reporter live outside of the US Embassy in the UK right now. And my name is Marco Torres, and we want to thank you so much. We hope all of you have a wonderful day. Keep your eyes glued to your screens as the rest of the world is, and continue watching on HAPS. Thank you.
Thank you so